an agenda for this evening's meeting, so if you'd like to just take one and pass it along. For any of you, I know there were PT students that were unable to be here tonight, and also social work students who were unable to be here tonight, and I've gotten some emails from several education students and PsyD students. So what I'm going to do is have this meeting videotaped so that it will be also available on Campus Cruiser. So anything you don't remember, we will have on videotape in Campus Cruiser once we get you all uploaded into that committee, okay? Jill, would you do me a favor and just make sure that I don't walk, I'm very movable when I talk, and I'm afraid I'm going to walk out of the screen. So, great. So you have the agenda. What we're going to do tonight is kind of give you an overview of some of our ideas, and eventually talk to Lynn about the medical requirements for the trip. We'll be talking about some of our policies that we put together for the trip, and then finally we're going to break up into our disciplinary groups to talk a little bit more about the kinds of service and the kinds of coursework that would actually be part of the trip. And I'd like to get that all done in an hour or less. So let's go ahead and talk. Can I? Okay, Lynn, we're going to put our medical officer first. She has a class that she has to run off to, so we're going to give that information out. Now, Lynn, we're going to give the paperwork out at the next meeting.
This might be helpful.
But this stuff, yes.
Helpful now.
Yes,
right.
not
so
the
if
form.
you could start disseminating that. Actually, I need to talk to him. Thanks. I'm going to hand this information for the tree huggers in the room. I apologize for killing the trees, but I did both sides, so.
Yes.
But I think this would be helpful also in your decision making if it's a financial issue or a planning issue, which would be the other thing. And then this last one. Good to go. While that information is being passed around, I thought it would be helpful for all of you to have a better understanding of what requirements you should start planning for now, and I would start planning now. For all of you that are students here, if you're PsyD, MSW, PT, we'll have a chart within health services. The human sexuality students are not required to provide us with any information, nor are the education students. So you're kind of on your own. However, if you would like some assistance capturing that information, you can meet with one of our healthcare providers, and they can help you identify ways to pull your picture together. So I think this would be really helpful to go through very quickly. You certainly can go to the CDC. They have a plethora of information, centersfordiseasecontrol.gov, cdc.gov, and has a lot of information. I just extrapolated what I thought was critical for you to kind of have at your fingertips while you're planning in the next 6-7 months. As far as vaccine-preventable diseases, again, for everyone that has a chart here, you more than likely have met those requirements already. However, I would recommend, if you do plan on going to the trip, once you've made your $400 deposit, make an appointment with one of our care providers. We will go through that, because a lot of times when you come in as a first year, you're giving us 8 or 9-year-old tetanus dates. We definitely want to update things like that. All right. So those are the usual routine things: measles, mumps, rubella, which is German measles, your polio, all things that you had as a kid. So that's one thing I know that you do have. The hepatitis A, I'd highly recommend. If you have not started that, we want to start soon, because it's a series of 2 vaccines with 6 months apart. And I certainly would want to send you to a country well vaccinated. If you only had one, you'd probably be about 75 to 80% protected. But if we have the opportunity to be proactive, I'd rather say let's get started now, so that by the time you're leaving, you're departing, you've had your 2nd vaccination and your series is complete. Hepatitis B. Most of you will have already been vaccinated against this. We started immunizing babies around 13, well, probably even earlier than that, 18 years ago. So it also is a sexually transmitted disease. So many of you might have gotten that in your high school years or your undergraduate years. Again, if we don't have the information, we can show you how to retrieve that information. For this one, if we can't retrieve your information, we can do something called a titer, which is a blood test, to see if you have adequate immunity. All right? Typhoid, definitely recommended, highly recommended. I certainly can't mandate anything, but if this was one of my favorite choices, I would definitely go with the typhoid vaccine. All right. And the yellow fever is currently recommended. It's going to be your choice. I talked to the University of Penn travel medicine folks again today just to make sure that I'm giving you the correct information. The difference between a recommendation and a requirement. United States is not a yellow fever high country. We don't have any of that here. So for you to go in to either of these countries is fine. People that are in countries that have a high rate of yellow fever will be mandated to have this coming in. So a recommendation is we encourage you, we think about it, you might want to get it. Required is you have to have it. Now, the last case of documented yellow fever in Trinidad was 1979. So if you're a risk taker or not, I myself would probably not get it, but that is my personal choice. You and yourself or your provider needs to make that choice. The last case in Tobago, there is no documented cases in Tobago. So again, your risk is very, very low, but I want to make sure that you're educated to know it's available and it's an option for you. All right. All the vaccines you require or are recommended, we have within Student Health Services. We charge you what it costs to bring it in. Doesn't cost anything to see us. Immunizations are a wonderful way to make money. Fortunately, the university sees your health care as very important, and we are not required to generate money. So what it costs to come in is what we're going to charge you. Now, on the one sheet here, you do have the fees of what everything costs, and that is as of today. Typhoid and Hep A I don't normally keep in-house because the requests are very low. Only 1% of our student population study abroad. So it really doesn't necessitate me to have it in. But these are the current prices of what it would cost you to get them today at Health Services. Your Tdap, anyone that hasn't had a tetanus shot within the last 2 years definitely should get the Tdap. The P is what I'm concerned about, and that is pertussis. In the Midwest, in the United States, there are current outbreaks of pertussis. This past fall, we had one isolated case where we thought the person had pertussis. We acted upon it, and when her final results came in 2.5 weeks later, she didn't have it. But we reacted in a positive way to make sure people were covered, in her local classroom setting and people that she lived with. But if within the last 2 years you haven't gotten a tetanus, I'd highly recommend the Tdap, and the P is really what we're interested in, and that's the current CDC recommendation. Measles, mumps, and rubella, most of you are going to have had that. Influenza, think to yourself, have you gotten that influenza shot this year? If not, that's a no-brainer. You can get it now, and it still will cover you. Yes?
Did you say how much the DPT shot was?
It's right next to it. Tdap is $45. Oh, it's on behind your measles update.
Oh, okay.
Meningitis, again, most of you, well actually as graduate students, anyone over the age of 25, it's not clinically indicated because you're not living in what I call institutionalized living. That is not a high risk in either of these areas. All right. Typhoid is $65 per injection. It's a one-time injection. Hep A is $75 per injection. Again, a series of 2. One now, one 6 months from now. And then your Hep B, if you haven't gotten all of them, there's a series of 3. Either a 0, 1, and 6, 0 meaning today, a month from today, and 6 months from today. Or sometimes what people do are a 0, 2, 4. 0 is today, 2 months, and 4 months. I tend to do that with my graduate students because they're particularly going into clinical sites that may not be here where they can get their vaccine series. So we can expedite that with the CDC's permission, so we do that. So take a look at that. The other thing is be an educated consumer. If you have your insurance and you know your practice, your private provider covers that, fine, go with them. More than likely, though, depending upon your age, these will not be covered. But again, educate yourself, give them a call, see what's going to be covered. If you need to get some with us and some with them, we can split it up. However, it best suits your financial issues. All right. Any questions on the immunization piece? Yes, ma'am.
For this study, do you have like a time frame? Because I had my shots done 2 years ago.
At this point in time, there's no need for boostering. Okay.
Are there any side effects?
There's side effects with everything. I would say the risk for any of them are minimal to nil. The most frequent is usually localized inflammation, And I think that just depends on, one, how the shot is given, and also, two, how your muscle responds to the serum that's placed in.
Even for these shots for
For